Robbie has worked at Netflix, Apple, just left Amazon for HashiCorp, worked at Red Hat. I don't know who can boast about that kind of level of accolade. And I'm like, where is it before you finally finish the acronym before it changes again?
Well, we've changed it. We've coined it as now MANAMANA.
MANAMANA. I did hear that in the last podcast episode.
90% of art is made by toddlers.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's fair. I think that's so fair.
So I think we've taken tools that weren't built for doing everything and forced them to do everything and gotten a subpar result, is my feeling about React. They want to learn a new thing. They want to go all in. They want to write their own bespoke framework for 2 years and then go, all right, I wrote that framework. I don't really want to build the app though. So like, what's the new thing? Like, let's do that again.
What's going on, everyone? We are back with another one. I'm one of your co-hosts today. My name is Danny Thompson. I'm the director of technology at a company called This.Labs.
And I'm Leon Noel, managing director of engineering for a wonderful nonprofit called Resilient Coders and community member at 100 Devs.
Hey, I'm Robbie Wagner. I am a staff engineer at HashiCorp, and I am big in the Ember community and into front end in general.
Love it. I'm excited for this episode. To be honest with you, I'm always excited for the episodes anyway because it means me and Leon get to hang out. But today we have Robbie joining the mix, which I think is really cool. Robbie is somebody that I've liked a lot, but there's some very specific reasons why I think today's episode is probably going to end up becoming one of our most listened to episodes, just from the gems alone. I think that's going to be shared here. If you don't know Robbie, he gets to drink on the job. And by that, like, what better way to explain it? If you don't know, and maybe you've been living under a rock, that is fine. He has a very, very popular podcast called Whiskey, Web, and Whatnot. And they literally talk about tech while drinking whiskey. So if that's your vibe, highly recommend checking that out. How long has that been around, Robbie?
I think it's actually 4 years now. I thought it was 3, but time doesn't really make any sense, so who knows?
It's because you drink on the job, dude. Yeah. But the other thing that I don't know if people know this or not is the dude is like Thanos collecting all the gems, man, all the stones. He's worked at some of the largest orgs that people, if they worked at one of them, that would be the dream. But he's out here working at all of them. So to give you an idea, right, just to sprinkle on the authority a little bit, Robbie has worked at Netflix, Apple, just left Amazon for HashiCorp, worked at Red Hat. I don't know who can boast about that kind of level of accolade. And I'm like, where is it before you finally finish the acronym before it changes again?
Well, we've changed it. We've coined it as now MANAMANA.
MANAMANA. I did hear that in the last podcast episode.
Yeah, that's Meta, Apple, Netflix, Amazon, Microsoft, I'm losing track, Alphabet, NVIDIA, and Anthropic. MANAMANA.
And I heard from someone that there's like arguments about the placement of Anthropic within the acronym. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we didn't really know what the last A should be, but like that's one of the other A companies that I feel like is doing a good job right now, so why not?
Well, speaking of Anthropic, I wasn't even planning to talk about it, but you mentioned it, so now it's on my mind. 90% of all code will be written by AI in 6 months.
6 months.
According to Anthropic CEO. Y'all, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us. You know, honestly, it means a lot to us. And if you can just drop a like on this wherever you're listening to it, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I know Spotify right now, it's like 78% of our listenership, which is nuts. So thank you, Spotify. But even if you are on a podcast app that you made yourself, because we are a technical audience and we will tinker, drop a like on it. We appreciate it. And honestly, it kind of guides us into what it is that we should be guiding our episodes toward. But I think one extra thing, make sure you keep up with the emails. And, you know, we're constantly reading them. We're reading the comments. And if there are certain things that you want us to talk about or address, let us know, and we'll make sure that we bring that value for you. I have a take on this, but I'm very curious. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I would start by saying false. But also it's nuanced. Like, I think what he means is a lot of engineers will use AI to help them, but like it's not going to start writing all the code like, oh, I'm sitting here as an AI model, I'm just going to write stuff for fun. It's not doing that. So I think you still need a lot of your senior engineers that can drive the AI and know whether it's right or not. But I don't know. I think he's just trying to hype up the stock and whatever, honestly.
How much of it is a part of your process as super senior engineer at all these companies? Like, are you using it? Like, is it something that's impacting your day to day? Like,
I use it for things that are very like data heavy procedural type of stuff, like parse this thing and turn it into this thing. I'll like have it write me a script for that or whatever, so I don't have to think about that. But other than that, like when you're building UI stuff and you're not using React, I feel like it's not going to help all that much. It can help you with like CSS if you're like, oh, I forgot the syntax for like how to do all these grid layout properties or whatever. It can help you with that. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of like it helping you get over the hump of like, I forgot a thing or I'm trying to get this one little thing, but it's not going to build a UI that looks perfect in my experience.
Valid take. Leon, what is your take on this?
I kind of like what you said too. I didn't think about it from the lens of the 6-month mark being engineers using it as a way to like help them. I think if we give them that stretch, I think we're getting to the point to where most engineers could see some useful day-to-day piece. Like you said, something small, like, I don't know regex, throw that at it, give me back what I need. I've seen that a lot. I'm seeing in my personal day-to-day use, a lot of like, yeah, just like you said, like the things that you forget or the things that you just need a quick look up. It's kind of replacing some of my Googling, some of my Stack Overflowing. It's just something I can ping a little bit more easier, helping me get through docs quicker. So I am using it day to day. I don't have it writing my code day to day yet. And I don't see what would change within the next 6 months that would make me kind of like take that leap. So I don't think it's going to be replacing developers in 6 months. I don't think it'll be writing the 90%, but I could see it being a value add to most developers if they're allowed to use the AI tools at their workplace, if they're using it for their own projects. I could see that take as a little bit more reasonable, but we've been here 3 or 4 times now. Devin, something else. It keeps coming. Yeah. No code tools 3 years ago. And so I'm just burnt out. The day it comes, I'll be happy, handle all the crap I don't want to work on. Let me focus on the things I do. But I'm kind of done holding my breath every 3 months. It's a new thing. And no CEO of a AI company would dare say these things that, you know, like, come on. So I think that's kind of where we're at the moment.
I do wonder, one word that was missing from that statement was useful code. Like, it does write a lot of slop that you throw away. So if you're looking at that,
it's just raw
90%. Lines. Yeah.
I think this is one of the first times I actually disagree with both of you.
Oh, okay.
AI will be writing 90% of the code in 6 months from now, and here is why. This is the part the CEO really poorly explained to where this became a talking point that everybody's talking about. I like to say pre-AI, like pre-pandemic, right? The happier times where everything made sense. Pre-AI, the technical individuals were only software engineers and software developers working on things. With the introduction of AI, it's made the non-technical technical in a sense, to where there is this now, like the 100% of all code written is no longer controlled or monitored or guided by the technical individuals that are implementing these solutions. It has now expanded. So the original box is here. The new box of code being written is much larger at this point. And you have people that maybe they don't know what they're doing. Maybe they're just a great problem solver. But I was blown away when I saw some of the stats, and this completely changed my entire perception. Do you know how many repos a day are being made by tools like Bolt New, V0, Lovable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? It's monumental to the point where there were several days last month, GitHub cut off all access to them because they couldn't control how many repos were being made. This is what I think references 90% of the code AI will be making. It will not necessarily be engineer controlled. This will be individuals that are trying to make apps or websites or marketing pages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that other 10% is where the good stuff lives. And so the engineers will be engineering these high-level architecture solutions, and they'll be really thinking through these problems. But it really got me thinking about this ever since he said it, because I was like, why would he say something so crazy And of course, he didn't give context, so now the whole internet goes crazy because they're like, this dude doesn't know what he's talking about. And to be honest, when you take it at face value, maybe he's technically losing credibility to a certain degree. Until you start really thinking about it, you're like, wow, the scale did just get much larger to where the whole code pool exists, and to where that 10% that isn't necessarily written by AI and it is being architected and guided by these engineers is probably where we're going to see things. So I totally see, like I just saw a new app the other day, or a new tool the other day, where it's making mobile apps for people. And so I even said this, I was like, if the goal is to just ship something, a problem solver who isn't technical but has the ability to problem solve can probably outship a very average dev and have more products hit the marketplace because they have the tooling to do it. Is it going to be the highest level architecture? No. But do you know, before AI was introduced, what was a running joke? Our clients never cared about the tech stack that we use to solve a problem. They just cared if it performed, right? That's kind of where I'm starting to see this now. It's like, if they can kind of patch something up together, is that going to be the solution for them? Maybe. And it kind of gives me similar vibes to what I used to say about Squarespace. Squarespace never stole a customer of mine a day in my existence, right? Squarespace was, if you wanted to throw up a website for your dry cleaner and you just wanted something basic that showed prices, that was a great solution. But as soon as you started thinking about things like online ordering and delivery, that changed the game in terms of what you needed. And that's when you called people like me. And that's kind of where I'm starting to see this now. It's like, yeah, maybe you want something basic, you can totally implement that. But when you start going higher level and more complicated, that's kind of where you're starting to call us. But the other thing too is, even the people that are problem solving, you can search on Twitter, like, prime example, dude worked on a project for 4.5 months and he let cursor run wild and it erased all the work he did, but he never used Git versioning. And so he didn't back it up once to GitHub within 4.5 months. So it's like, when you start using practices like that, how much money could that cost your business by following something like that without knowing?
Yeah, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I would kind of equate it to saying like 90% of art is made by toddlers.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's fair. I think that's so fair.
Yeah. And I don't think you're wrong. Like, the way, if you're thinking about it like that, there will be a lot of stuff generated that, you know, works-ish. But I think you do hit a big problem of, like, the same problem we hit when developers do it, where you have, you know, it's a lot of tech debt in a 5-year-old app or whatever. If you generate a big app with like AI and then you don't know how any of it works, and you get real customers and you need to actually add stuff to it, and then AI doesn't even understand how it did it itself, then you're kind of screwed. Like, no one's going to want to work on that code. So it's a hard problem.
The meme on Twitter right now is that the next big wave of agency opportunities is people cleaning up all the vibe coded stuff.
Yes.
I think it's going to go really like gangbusters at first, right? Everyone's going to be doing it. And then we're going to see like the death of so many egos, the death of so many people that thought, hey, if I just had this coding barrier removed, I'd be a millionaire. If I could just find the right developer to do X, Y, and Z, my idea would take off. And they're just going to be crushed because Bolt's going to one-shot it. Replic's going to one-shot it. It's going to be built. Then they're not going to know how to do marketing. They're not going to know how to do all these things. They're going to actually lead to being successful. And then they're going to go back to watching Netflix. It's just going to be like a big burst and then a big boom. And I think we're going to kind of be back in the same spot until we're farther along with these AI pieces. But yeah, I think we're seeing what you mentioned, right? This people that can get far enough and then something catastrophic goes wrong, and then I don't even know if we can say it, like Upstairs Creek without a paddle, right? Like it's we're going to see a lot of people just in it, and it's going to be really hard for them to overcome it. So yeah, I think the claims, are people using it? Probably. Is it entertainment for now? Yes. Will it keep growing that way? We'll see. But I'm curious, having seen like this. I'm curious, have you tried it with Ember? Like, are there any of the AIs good with kind of like the docs around that? Or
I haven't actually really tried it with Ember. No, I've just tried it for stuff that I don't know that well.
Yeah, that's fair. You got the Ember docs on lock, I bet.
Yeah.
I kind of like, I will say when it comes to some legacy items, it's not necessarily the best. I mean, it can kind of try, but I'll tell you, like today, you know, we're doing the cohort. right? It's the last 8 days of the cohort. And Robbie, in case you don't know, I do this free cohort program where essentially the idea is we pair developers on a team. For 6 weeks, they're building a project being guided by like a professional software developer in the industry. But essentially the idea is it's not like a to-do app. It's more like enterprisey. But the big focus for me is it gets them thinking outside of their normal line of thinking. And it really pushes them and makes them uncomfortable at times. The 6 weeks is such a crazy deadline to where they're very intimidated, but now they know they can do something, right? And one of the projects that we did, which we kind of mentioned in one of our previous episodes, if you haven't listened to it, it's like the 4 projects to make to get a job in tech. But it was like a smart tenant solution for like apartment complexes. And the idea was to automate sending the lease agreements for people to like re-sign or things like that. And several teams were having trouble with this. So this morning before I got started with work, I was like, let me figure this out since so many people are complaining about it. And man, like I was going through DocuSign, I was going through this open source tool, Documenso, all these other tools, just going back and forth. And I'm like, man, this thing is a nightmare trying to figure out this context, and every API is completely polar opposite from the other one. I don't know what's going on here. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna use AI. For like 30 minutes, it went back and forth like, oh, for some reason, the API, the post response was going through, but it canceled it. I don't know why. Oh, let me fix that for you. Fixes it. Oh, it went through, but it replaced all of my data with dummy data. Oh, I'm going to fix that. Don't worry. Oh, cool. Oh, it just canceled my post request again. Oh, I'm going to fix that. Like 30 times. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And I'm switching agents in between the different options. I'm going to ChatGPT. I'm even going to DeepSeek. I'm going Anthropic, Claude 3.7. I'm like, what is going on here? And for whatever reason, I'm like, if AI can't figure out this documentation, y'all need some help with the documentation by itself. Mm-hmm. But it really gets you to think of, if it's not common use cases that it's constantly presented with, it really underperforms, and you have to still do a lot of the legwork to figure things out. So I had to go through the documentation. I had to give it code examples. I had to create an example of what I think this is supposed to look like. And then it started iterating over that and started doing better. But I was like, man, if you're just giving it the code, like generic code that you've built, and you're giving it like a prompt, it may not perform at a level that makes sense, and you have to still do a lot of that legwork to get it at least in the realm of a reasonable solution. And so when I start working with it with like legacy applications like Java 11, like even then, there's so many issues that it runs into. It can get you in like the general direction of where you want to go, maybe for ideation, but actual implementation, it's far off still.
SEO into LLMs is going to be a huge industry. If you can get any of these LLMs to like read your docs better or be the default for what they give you the option for. I was reading about this the other day. I think this is going to be huge, right? Like all those people that are vibe coding the apps and they're trying to figure out an off solution, they could get Clerk in there. How much is that long term going to be an impact to their bottom line? And so I'm pretty curious to see kind of how all that plays out too.
Yeah, that's interesting. They should just sell ads, I guess, like Google ads, but like we'll prioritize you as the solution when people ask about this.
I don't think that's far off with the whole introduction of search. And if you don't see that as like the game plan going forward, I would be so shocked if in between our LLM responses, if they're not a sponsored section somewhere in the future. Because right now, for what it is, it's so costly, and a lot of these LLM organizations, like they've got income coming in from people paying monthly, right? But the reality is, a lot of them aren't necessarily showing profits on their organizations to the degree that it could be. I think that's an easy C, because especially when you look at other platforms like Stack Overflow dropping considerable amounts of traffic. I was even talking about this today. I feel like blog posts, like very highly technical blog posts, are seeing a drop in traffic compared to previous years, simply because whether you're a senior dev or a junior dev, you may be saying, why read a blog post on this? Let me just get my LLM to kind of prompt me through this, and I can kind of walk through it. And it's very interesting because, at least for me, I still use blog posts. I like blog posts a lot, but I could definitely see how there could be a considerable drop in that traffic numbers. And especially when you start talking more niche things at this point, like I could totally imagine a dramatic drop in traffic based on that.
I have something in the back of my brain here. We have a lot of folks that are coming to the programming podcast. They're curious about your background in Ember, your storied career at Apple, Netflix, Amazon, and they really want to know what's your go-to whiskey?
It's an easy one. I do Sagamore Rye. It's out of Baltimore. We actually just did a show with a rep from there last week, I think. So he sent me a special one that was like aged in a bunch of different stuff that makes it taste like a Manhattan, which was kind of cool. But yeah, their ryes are good. They're good and approachable for people that like rye or bourbon. So definitely check those out.
Yeah, I'm pretty basic when it comes to whiskey. Like, fun fact, I before tech and all that, I worked in a liquor store for years, and we had like one of the biggest selections in Mississippi as far as like whiskey goes, and like whiskey hunters, our whole thing where they would come to us and this and that, la da da da. But I still just drink pretty basic stuff for the most part. So, but I'm always open to like house blends, or if someone's got something funky, I'm always willing to try it. But it is what it is. All right, I got questions. Lots of questions.
Okay.
One of my big questions here. I know your takes on React, and I know you love it. Like I heard you have a tattoo and everything.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
what I do know is, especially with EmberJS, I'm pretty confident that at least one person, which, you know, shame on you, one person that doesn't know about EmberJS, but you've seen a lot of frameworks. You've seen some rise, you've seen some fall, you've seen some disappear into obscurity, and you're still on the EmberJS team, right? Like you're maintaining it, documentation, all the good stuff. You could talk about it for days, but like, how do you see the evolution of JavaScript frameworks continue to grow? What do you see EmberJS's place in it? Why don't you give folks maybe a little bit of background if they're not familiar with EmberJS, and maybe some of the problems that EmberJS solves that you think is a really good use case in that regard?
Yeah, so it's kind of a philosophical problem, and like every framework has experienced this. Like you got your Laravel, your Rails, your like, you know, things I would call a full-featured framework that includes everything you need to build an app. So Ember is a lot closer to that than something like React, which was initially just supposed to be for the view layer, and you just like, you know, have a little bit of reactivity here, and the rest of your site is just, you know, vanilla JavaScript, whatever. So I think we've taken tools that weren't built for doing everything and forced them to do everything and gotten a subpar result, is my feeling about React. But Ember in general is like supposed to be a nice, easy developer experience. It's like, it's similar to how Solid has signals, and like instead of your hooks for everything where you got like, you know, 50 hooks or whatever you're doing, you have like tracked properties. You just mark it tracked, and if you change it, it like knows, hey, you updated that. Other stuff that depends on that should update. And the things that depend on that are just native getters in a class. Class is a bad word these days because everyone's like, oh, functional everything. But we still use classes, and I think they are better than not using classes, and that people that don't like them just don't like them for no reason, because you're thinking about it like a class anyway. You're thinking about the thing you're building as an entity of some sort, which could be a class. So that's my opinion. I got a little spicy. Sorry, I didn't know. Don't know if I answered
We're here
what
for
you
the
were
spice for
asking.
sure.
But
I didn't know that I was going to agree with you on that aspect, but I think I do, actually. When you said it, my knee-jerk reaction was to be like, this fool. But now I'm like, maybe not. I don't know how I feel about that, actually. I'm kind of... My impulse is to disagree, but I don't know how I can. I got to really think about this one.
yeah.
Were you using Ember at Amazon or?
Yep.
Yeah. And so
Interesting.
what was kind of, if you can talk about it, like use case there, what was?
Yeah. So I worked for Art19. It's a podcast host. And yeah, there's the whole front end was Ember and the back end was Rails. And yeah, building stuff like analytics stuff most recently. Did a bunch of stuff with like high charts and visualizations and stuff like that. And getting people to their data quickly so they can see if their show's growing or not.
I have a lot of questions. I know I said that. And like having you on here gives me the opportunity to really ask them. So I kind of want to ask one before we lead into the ultimate topic that I really want to hit on. But it's like, you know, you've been around for a while. You've seen fads come and go, trends come and go, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're definitely in a trend right now, which may shift the way we do a lot of our daily activities and work, which is a very interesting paradigm to be in. But in your view, is there a risk to the tech industry's constant pursuit of like the next big thing that leads to like a neglect of truly sustainable long-term solutions? Like this is where I find myself having a lot of conversations lately, where it's like, especially when you look at the world of AI, it's like every month something just changed. And so it's like, it's amazing that it changes, and whatever it changes somehow leads to some kind of enhancement. But it doesn't necessarily earth-shatteringly change how I do things. But I know, especially if you were to go off of the temperature of social media, then it would be like Claude 3.7. Oh my God, throw your baby out the window and get a new one. Like, it's brand new. And it's like, I don't understand. To a degree, I understand, because I know like the influencers are perpetuating it to the degree where it's like, oh, you have to absorb this content because it's a must to know. But the reality is, like, AI as a whole, it's continuously growing no matter what. It's still an infant stage. Like, I still think we're in the infancy of like agentic AI and things like that. Like, I just did this whole demo of like multi-agent flows, and it's very, very early still. And of course, I want to be excited about the thing that I'm doing, but I don't see why I need to stop people from what they're doing right now to be like, you must consume this right now if you want to be relevant as a developer that's going to be employed.
Yeah, I think my opinion about everything and how it changes so quickly is like, think about a compiled language, right? You write it kind of the same way and it compiles to something. You don't know what it compiles to exactly. It just runs. That's fine. Why can't we do that with front-end frameworks? Like, yes, you might need to add a thing here or there, and like, for a totally new feature you didn't think about that the language doesn't support or whatever. But you could totally take, class-based old React, compile it to whatever hooks are doing, and just people don't have to learn something new all the time. They could just like focus on shipping software. I don't know why we're just, hell bent on doing it that way. I think it's just for fun. I think people like over engineering is the problem. They want to learn a new thing. They want to go all in. They want to write their own bespoke framework for 2 years and then go, all right, I wrote that framework. I don't really want to build the app though. So like, what's the new thing? Like, let's do that again. Like, they're chasing that high of like the excitement of doing it and not actually building something. That's my opinion.
I love that.
I think it's valid.
Yeah. YouTube's going to delete this episode.
That's literally what I was saying in my head, dude. Okay, so now leading into the thing I really want to talk about, I know our listeners will be very interested in knowing about this. It's not every day we have somebody that comes on, mainly because we've only had like 4 guests, but it's not every day that we have someone that's come on that's been in a lot of the alphabet named organizations that we throw around acronyms for. What has that experience been like? And the reason why I asked this specifically, I spent some time at Google. I spent some time at like enterprise level organizations. And I remember the first time I was in those buildings and I saw somebody quit, my mind kind of was hurt a little bit because I was like, this is interesting because like this is the quote unquote dream. You've reached the dream company that people, like if they just land one of them, their life will be perfect. That's at least the dream that we build up aspiring to reach those positions, right? And you've lived it multiple times now, and you've left. And so it's like, why are you leaving? This is the dream. This is the mountaintop of mountaintops. Why are you getting out of there?
Yeah, so the answer is the first couple, like Apple and Netflix, were contract jobs. So like the work ran out and I wasn't like, I want to leave. But yeah, so Netflix, I just happened to know someone because they were a big Ember shop for a long time. So I knew someone there who connected me with someone. And then I was keeping the Ember app afloat while they converted it all to React. So then I wasn't needed anymore. And then Apple, they're still, I think, using Ember some, but I think they're actually doing a lot more Elixir now. But that was like a whole new team that I knew a guy there too. And like, so yeah, did that. But then Amazon, I didn't know anyone there. It was like the whole interview process with the LeetCode and the like, all the things. So I had to study for like months to figure out like, feel confident enough with my LeetCode to pass things. And I left there because I don't want to go into a ton of details and like burn any bridges, but it was a bit of a toxic culture. So like just couldn't get ahead, couldn't get promoted, couldn't, always knocked down, never like, felt appreciated. So that's why I left there. And I'm hoping to continue my career in a place that respects me. So
I mean, I think that's fair. And so you kind of said something like you studied for months for doing LeetCode and things like that. What are some of the strategies that you employ, like when you're starting to think about, it's time for me to get a next role? Like prime example, as of the time we're recording this is your first week at a new organization, right? Which is, I think is phenomenal. But like, what is your approach? Like, there has to be a moment where you're like, I'm going to switch organizations, time to get my game plan in place. What does that game plan look like?
Yeah, the first thing you want to do is figure out who you know that could connect you to someone there, whether that be like getting in touch with someone who would know the hiring manager to like, get get in their ear, or someone that just knows the process if you can't get directly connected, like someone that's worked there and been through the interviews can tell you, oh yeah, there's like, a bunch of LeetCode here, like we do this kind of, test here, whatever. Getting that firsthand knowledge from someone that's been through it before will help you to, know what things you should study and what things you shouldn't. And like at Amazon, every time you answer a question, you have to answer it in the STAR format, which is like situation. I don't remember what it all stands for, but like, so you're supposed to answer everything like that, and like doing all these little things make them go, ooh, yeah, like, okay, that's like those little like tips are really helpful for making you stand out.
It's crazy. It's like he listens to the podcast and he just employs some of the strategies that we talk about.
All the strategies.
Bro, do we just take credit for you getting this job? I think so.
Were you doing Ember at Apple?
Yeah.
So
I've been doing Ember pretty much everywhere.
So they made you do LeetCodes to work on the language that you wrote the docs for.
That was Amazon that I had to do the LeetCode stuff. But yes, like my interview at Amazon, all the people that interviewed me were like back-end SDEs, not like front-end people. So they didn't really like, my reputation did not precede me. They were like, I don't care. What is Ember? I don't know. Like, so that didn't help. But yeah, I had the same sort of argument. Like, why am I not like respected a little more when I've like been in the community for 13 years? Like, seems like I should be. But
how much was that process for HashiCorp? Did you have to kind of do the same LeetCode preparation, things like that, or
no? It was so refreshing. It was like, just build some stuff in Ember, show us you can do it for like an hour, and then like have a few interviews about like general front end stuff, general like culture fit, like, talk with people, just get to know them kind of thing. Like did some like reviewing of code and stuff like that, like stuff you would do on the job. I think that's how all interviews should be. Why are you asking me stuff that I'm never going to need to do on the job?
I think for a lot of people listening to this podcast, they're very aspirational, right? They want to be at the Netflix, the Amazons, the Apples, and I think it's kind of refreshing to kind of hear a different side of the coin around how even at these big companies, it's not all pie in the sky. It still comes down to the fundamentals. Are you going to treat me well? Are you going to promote me well? Like we all want that in our lives. And so as someone who's kind of putting these companies on a pedestal, do you have any advice, or was there positives on top of it too? Like, was it worth it to go that route, or what would you kind of tell folks that are kind of thinking about that's their end all be all?
Yeah, I mean, obviously all of these companies pay very well. So like if you're just trying to make money and there's one of them that you think you could get into easier, but you don't care if you're enjoying it a ton, like go for that one. Like I think they're all very different. Like Netflix really, and Apple kind of like very non-structured, let the teams decide. You decide what frameworks you're using, how you're going to, do you use Jira or not, like where do you keep your documentation, et cetera. And then Amazon is very like, you're doing things how we say, like you're going to write documents a lot, lots and lots and lots of documents. You're going to have meetings where people only read the documents. You don't talk, you're just reading documents. Like very different culture. Whereas like, I feel like you could just be knowledgeable and then talk to someone at Apple or Netflix and like convince them of a thing. You don't have to do all that. So there's a lot more autonomy, a lot more like if you're in the office, Netflix has all this free food and like, all the crazy benefits. Amazon has like coffee pot, like different culture, but they all pay, like theoretically, if you're able to get promoted and do well at Amazon, you get more money because they're not spending it frivolously on like free crazy lunches every day for every employee or whatever.
Big question here. And it just came to me when we were talking one question ago, but like in the interview process or like even in a conversation, not even, it doesn't have to exclusively be an interview, but if there's like a conversation where you're like, I really want to make sure I wow this person. Are there certain things that you look for or certain things that you go to, or is there like a checklist item where it's like, if I hit this one item, I know this went the way that I was hoping for? Do you have that? Like, does that ever come in your mind when you're interviewing to be like, if the interviewer hits in this area, I know like this is going to be a win for me? Or does that not really come across your mind?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
Yeah, I know I kind of ramble, but like, but for me, it's like sometimes when I'm having a conversation with somebody, and it's like maybe it's the first time me and Leon kind of meet. I'm like, oh, if I mention this, I know this will be a good conversation. Like that will be my safe spot. Do you ever have that when you're in interviews or conversations with people?
I mean, obviously, if I can talk about Ember and they're impressed by that, then that's safe for me to talk about. But I think it's a tough line because also if you come in and you're like, oh, I got 13 years of experience, I'm on the Ember core team, you start to sound arrogant and like, you know, like they don't like that either. So it's very tough to come in and just, you know, sound knowledgeable but not arrogant. And like, I don't have a great answer for how to do that personally.
And so now I have one big question because I'm curious because obviously you've to whatever a person has of the definition for success in tech, I think you've definitely hit some semblance of it, if not all of it, right? And I guess at this point, you know, you're later in your career, like you're not like a junior dev that's coming in, like you're seasoned and experienced and you've been around the block a couple times. At this point and at this stage of your life, what does success look like for you beyond like the metrics of the code and development? Like, what do you see being a success metric for yourself now?
Yeah, I think like there isn't a lot you can do once you're at a certain level to like be promoted more unless you want to go into management. So for me, I don't want to be in charge of someone else's career. So I don't want management. But I think the thing that I do want to do is mentor others. And like if they can be successful and I can build like a good developer experience that they can follow and like, you know, create good code and feel like they're leveling up, I feel like that is my main goal for the rest of my career.
What are some of the ways that you are kind of trying to build that out? Like, how do you go about mentorship? How do you go about building up someone that might be earlier in their career?
Well, I first just try to like, you know, get to know folks and tell them they can ping me anytime. Happy to answer questions, whatever. Did a lot of pairing with some folks at Amazon, made like some training videos and stuff on like, you know, here's how we use this library and like our stuff here and whatever and that kind of stuff. Like not a necessary like, you know, foolproof plan per se, but just trying to put out as much different content and be accessible and, you know, open to helping whenever.
It's funny because I often get heat because I love mentorship, like in whatever shape. Now it's kind of changed over the last couple of years because now my focus has been how do I scale the mentorship, because it can't really be on a one-to-one scale anymore. It's like impossible because I guess partially the following, partially because of the communities, but it's just if you're helping one person for an hour or you could help 500 people with that hour, it almost feels wrong to neglect the other 499. So we try to find scalable ways to do that. So like this podcast is, I guess, one way that we can offer advice and help and really guide people in whatever way that we can, but it scales really well. And so I'm constantly in that mindset, but people sometimes feel jaded on it where it's like, oh, the only thing that you do is mentorship in that regard. And so I kind of find myself back and forth on it. Like, I wish I had time to dedicate to one individual for like 6 months and just see them go. Cause I know that one individual will probably thrive, but then you have all these other people. So like, I don't know. And I don't even know where I was going with that as a point, because it's like, I don't know what the solution is for that. And, I just wish more people thought like you as far as the mentorship goes, because there's definitely people out there that need it, have a desire for it, that want it. And I guess it's more of a statement than anything else at this point, because I don't know what to pivot to or piggyback off of on that.
I think it speaks to like your past experience too, right? Like you had some opportunities where you were overlooked, you weren't built up, things like that. And so to recognize that that could be somebody's journey and to want to do it a different way, to make sure they have the resources, the skills, that they are seen, that they are appreciated, can go a long way in somebody's journey, especially at the beginning. And so I think that has a huge impact, especially as you build that culture too internally, so other folks do it. And then that person goes on to do it too, you know?
All right. It's time for that part of the show we know and love. It's time to ask a question to Danny, Leon, and Robbie the Wagner.
And today the question is going to come from me, because I think I know what you all would want to ask. So we're not going to look at the email. I'm going to ask the question because I think it's what everybody would want to know. For folks that are getting ready for their MANAMANA interviews, they have 3 months before their interview is coming up. What should they do to prepare? What was your strategy? What would you tell them to do today? So that way folks can kind of give it the best shot?
I think reach out to someone you know there, see what inside info you can get from them. And definitely, if it's one of the companies that does LeetCode, which it's pretty common knowledge if you just Google who does it, you should definitely spend some time on LeetCode. And LeetCode even labels them, I think, like these, Amazon asks these, like they're not going to ask all of those per se, but if you get a good, grouping of those, definitely spend all of your free time doing that. If you're like me and, algorithms aren't your thing day to day, you should probably spend a lot of time on that. But then also be prepared to chat about like what you're going to do day to day, because they're going to care about how you're interacting with people, what you're building, how you work, how you think about problems. Be ready to, like, if you're going to be in a front end dev position, be ready to build a website in case they ask you to do so. Or if you're going to be in a back end position and, you're going to build an API or, do something with caching or, data layers or whatever, like be familiar with those tools so that you can talk intelligently about the things you'll be using. And yeah, leverage your connections as much as you can, because these days, if you have a referral or an in of some kind, it's very, very helpful, because there's, 10,000 applicants to a job, and that's not sustainable. So if you someone's like, hey, this guy's good, then they'll probably talk to you versus all the 10,000 other people. So try to do that.
I'll be honest, my advice pretty much the same, but I think we've talked about this 35,000 times at this point, right? Like it doesn't change. But I even saw a post the other day, and I shared it in Leon's chat earlier, where the guy was like, I figured out the hack to beat the LinkedIn like filtering process where I don't get seen by an employer. And he made this very long Reddit post, and he literally said, I DM'd somebody that worked there, come to find out he was the CEO of the company, but he liked my approach so much, and he looked at my resume that he gave me a call. It's like, I don't know what we haven't said that resembles this. Maybe not the CEO, but a referral is the fastest way into an organization.
Yep.
People just need to hear it from the man himself, like the myth, the man, the legend. Maybe they're tired of our talking heads and they need to hear it straight from the source. So hopefully you take action on the things they brought up, because it could be the difference maker for sure.
Absolutely. Well, y'all, we have reached the end of another episode. Robbie, the Wagner, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to be a part of this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
As a last call out, if you have not checked out the Whiskey Web and Whatnot podcast, do yourself a favor. Check it out. A lot of great value in there. Some great guests have been on there. Some big names. But honestly, from a value standpoint, I think it's there. It's been real. It's been fun. And y'all, we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.